Thank you, Angela, for the introduction, and thank you so much for helping me setting up this tasting. It's, I think, the most exclusive tasting I've ever done. So I'm happy to share this with you today. It was very difficult to find all these wines. You helped me a lot doing that. It's not easy to locate the wine and to get them to London. And I will make a short presentation and then we go on with 11 wines instead of 10. I'm sorry. There's one more in the list. I just introduced you a little bit about Wine Grapes book. I'm sure that all of you already have the book, but just in case, if you want to know some details, I have some information about that. The first one is that we have won the 5 major awards in the world as Best Drink Book in 2012 and 13. We got Fortnum & Mason last week. We got James Beard 2 weeks ago, and Rebozo, Gourmand World Book and Wine and Spirit magazine. So we are very happy. There's a few more coming, and we hope that we go on the same road with this book. Just to give you some information about how it all started with the book, it's always interesting to have insider stories. So here are the pictures of Carol Meredith in 2002. I did my postdoc in her lab in University of California in Davis. And Carol retired after I did the postdoc with her. It was not my fault. She retired to go to Napa Valley to make wine with her husband at age 55, which was a good, smart move for her. And in 2004, Gensis was contacting Carol Meredith, asking her to update the Oxford Companion to Wine. And Carol said, well, I'm retired now, I'm out of business, but there is this Swiss guy, he's now in Italy, and maybe he's interested in doing this, which I did in 2006 with an idea in mind. 2008 we met with Gensis Robinson and Julia Harding at Café Anglais, as she says, in London, and I was suggesting her to make a book about the most known grape varieties in the world, to tell the stories, because everybody would ask me, do you have not a book but a website, free website with all this information? So I thought we should make a book. And Gensis cleverly said, well, she said that she waited until my second glass of wine to suggest me to write a book about all the grape varieties in the world. So it took us 4 years of hard working, Gensis, Julia and I, and last October at the Cantor Award we were presenting the book freshly out of press. So that's the story, the content. You have an introduction with all the concepts. I'm just putting forward 2 of them. Then you have all the grape varieties by alphabetical order that are presented. The first concept that I like to emphasize on is the concept of grape variety. When I ask a winemaker, what is a grape variety? Usually they smile at me and, okay, I know what it is. So what is Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc for you? 3 grape varieties. And I say, no, it's one and the same grape variety that has had some mutations, some accidents, some biological changes, but it's the same grape variety for the ampelographer and for the geneticist that I am. Because at the beginning of a grape variety there is always one pip, one grape seed growing into a plant. If the plant is interesting enough, then the grower will put it apart and multiplicate the plant by vegetative propagation, taking cuttings or layerings to have many plants. If you do this for 1,000 years, like Pinot for example, maybe 2,000 years, you have millions of copies. When you do these copies, you have some accidents, some mutation that appear, and some of them have an impact, a visual impact, like the color of the berry. So this is very impressive for the human eye, so the humans will put it apart. And once, for example, Pinot Noir has turned to Pinot Blanc, it's almost impossible for another mutation to come at the same place and cancel the mutation. So once it has become white, it stays white. And every time we have some differences that we can see with the eyes, we call them clones. And the total of clones is the grape variety. The older the grape variety is, the higher the number of clones is. And at the starting point there is the seed, grape seed. So you need to have pollination before. So you need to have one father and one mother for every grape variety. That is very important to understand the pedigrees that I will show you during this morning presentation. There's also another science that I like very much, although being not an expert in it. It's glottochronology. This is the chronology of languages. And if you look at the word wine in all languages, you have on the right-hand side the Indo-European languages. Of course, vino in Italian, oinos in Greek. All these are Indo-European. But if you look on the left, Georgian is not an Indo-European language, it's Kartvelian, and it says vino. Hebrew is not Indo-European, it's Semitic, it says yain. They all have the same root, which predates Indo-European languages. The root is wino. I don't know how to pronounce it, we don't have any records from this period, but it's very interesting to have this genealogical tree of languages. On the right, still you have the Indo-European languages, and the numbers are the dates before present when the languages have started to become different. And you see that Indo-European languages started to spread out about 9,000 years before present. But the common root is even older than that, which means that 9,000 or 10,000 years ago, the word wine already existed, because wine already existed. So we are making wine since more than 9,000 years, which is amazing. But the real reason for the emergence of languages is this one. Can you read it? Yes, you can. Okay. So in wine grapes, we have 42 countries claiming to have indigenous varieties. Some of them are hybrids, some of them are natural crossings, even some from United Kingdom. Well, don't be so proud, because it is Muscat of Hamburg that was bred in the UK. The country with the highest number of grape varieties is by far Italy, with 377. France comes second place with 204. I was surprised with France, because the appellation regulation is so strict that it's difficult to grow something that is not allowed. But still they managed to do that, giving fancy names to the wines. So when we released the book, we knew that we had done our maximum, our best to cover all the planet, but we knew also that we were humans and not infallible, and that we could have missed some. So in January I started a web competition called Not in White Grapes competition, asking people on social medias to tell us if they knew variety that is commercially cultivated but not in wine grapes. And in 1 month, 10 people had won a bottle of Swiss Valley wines that I would send them when they were able to locate such a grape variety. And these 10 people are here. Well, it's on the website just to show you up. And many more have since been discovered. So the book says a complete guide to 1,368 varieties, but today the total is over 1,400, 1,405 or something like that. So this gives us a good opportunity to make a second edition in a few years. But in the meantime, we will release an e-book probably in September, because it's very heavy, as you said, 3 kilo and 70 grams. And journalists like you, or wine writers like you, don't want to carry it all over the world all the time. This is not even my copy, it's Jens's copy. So we are releasing an e-book this September, but we want it to be very user-friendly, so we have to work on it to jump from one variety to another easily for the reader. Okay, it also has 14 pedigree diagrams in the book, and the most impressive of them is this one with 156 grape varieties in the same pedigree, showing that all these varieties, you cannot read it, but all these varieties are genetically close one to another by parent-offspring relationship. If you take a look at this, and you see here, for example, it's not working on the screen, so you see in the middle Grüner Veltliner, for example, and you can see that the parents are Savagnin and Saint-Georgener. Then you can move and go to Sylvaner and see the parents. Then you see Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Sauvignon Blanc. You have all these parentages that you can read along this pedigree, and you can download the PDF on our website, winegrapes.org, if you want. And this kind of genetic relationship made us think of a new concept, the concept of founder varieties. Instead of thinking like any other book that this variety comes from Egypt, this one from Georgia, this one from Armenia, I don't know, we think that a limited number of founder varieties have been introduced from these areas a long time ago, and what we cultivate today are the grandchildren or grand-grandchildren of these founder varieties, which explains why they are all interconnected together. Among these founder we have Cabernet Franc. Bordeaux people are surprised to read that Cabernet Franc for us is under Spain, because we believe it comes from Basque country, País Vascos. We haven't heard of them yet, we'll see. Of course there is Savagnin, Traminer is the same, there is Gouais Blanc, there is Tribidrag, everybody knows Tribidrag of course, which is Zinfandel or Primitivo. You can read the story, it's fascinating. And a lot of these varieties are founder varieties. We won't have founder varieties today. We can start with the tasting right now, so I'm finished with the introduction. We will have all these grape varieties to taste today. And at first we had prepared 10 of them, but when I told about Versoan to Angela, and she said, wow, that would be amazing to taste this variety, I said, okay, we'll have another one. So I took this wine from my personal collection, because let's start with it. Versoan is a variety from Sud Tyrol in northern Italy, Alto Adige in Italian. We don't know when it was mentioned for the first time. We have no record. We are not sure of the origin of the name. There are many different stories. One saying that it comes from Versailles in France, in Paris, and some French people would have brought it, which is not true, and there's no evidence for that. I believe that it comes from Verdolen, which is the dialect for green, which is pretty easy to see on the color of the grape. We don't know the parentage. I checked it. I had samples from the vines. It has no relatives. It has survived only as one single vine in a castle here, Castel Castenzungen in Tesimo. It's west of Bolzano in Sud Tyrol. This is the castle. You can visit the castle. You can also have weddings there if you want. And there is one single vine covering 350 square meters and thought to be 350 or 400 years old. And they make wine with this vine together with 100 plants that have been transplanted to the research station, and they produce 400 bottles per year numbered, and you can only buy the bottles at the castle, which I did. So, and then I sent the wine over to London for today's tasting. So I suggest we try this wine. More than welcome. I just give my impressions. The nose is marked by green apple aromas, wet stone as well, quite mineral. The mouth is light-bodied, marked acidity, and a touch of apricot on the finish, a little bit bitter, which is very nice. And this marked acidity made me think that it could be related to Gouais Blanc. Gouais Blanc is the father of a lot of grape varieties, including Chardonnay, including Riesling, Furmint, all with a lot of acidity. So I checked it, and it's not related to Gouais Blanc, but it may be in the same league in terms of grape and wine. So it's a very nice dry wine. Maybe it's not made the best way because it's half from a huge single vine and half from recently planted vines in a grape institute center, viticulture center. Let me tell you that I had this wine 2 years ago with Alois Lageda from Sud Tyrol, famous producer, biodynamic. He was amazed by the qualities of this wine, and he decided in 2012 to plant 500 plants of Versol. So maybe in a few years we will have a Versol made by Alois Legeder that I will be happy to present you. Okay, so any comment on this wine? Okay, let's move on to the second. The second one is Orléans Gelb. Despite its name, is not from France but from Germany, from the Rheingau, in the Hesse region. I can show you on this. It is a variety that is typical to the Rüdesheimer Berg in Rheingau. It was mentioned in 1539 as Hart Inch in Hieronymus Bock Kräuterbuch, a very, very old botany book. And Hart Hinge means dark wood, and it's true, it has dark wood. And the Orléans city in France has nothing to do with the wine, with this vine, and we don't know why they gave this name to this Orléans Gelb, because it is, as many other grapes, the progeny of Gouais Blanc, which means it is half sibling of Chardonnay, half sibling of Riesling, ferment, and so on. We don't know the surface of this. Maybe today 1,300 vines existing, which is almost nothing, because it was mentioned in Rüdesheim in 1810 already. This is an old wine label, 1810, in Rüdesheim. It says Rüdesheimer Berg Orléans Wine. By the end of the 19th century, it was replaced with Riesling, and after 1921 it was considered extinct. And in the 80s, Professor Helmut Becker at Geisenheim Institute started to make some prospections in the old vineyards, and he found old feral vines in Rüdesheimer Berg, the place where it used to be cultivated, of this Orléans variety. It was then planted in the 90s by 2 wineries, and still today only 2 wineries have this wine in production. One is Knisper, and the other one is Georg Breuer, the one we have here today. The first commercial wine was made in 2002 by Breuer, and at the same time Andreas Jung, who is also a researcher, has found some old vines of Orléans Gelb in another region near Ordenheim in Rhineland-Pfalz. So just next to the origin of the vine. He says it was allegedly planted between 1808 and 1559 for historical reasons, but there is no evidence for that, of course, which would make it the oldest vine in Germany or in the world, but we have no evidence for that. So I'm a little bit skeptical about this finding, but anyway, it shows that old vines of this variety are still around. Today it is made by 2 wineries. One is Georg Breuer Winery, and today it is run by daughter Teresa Breuer here. They make 400 bottles per year, almost not for sale. It's not official on the wine list, and Teresa was kind enough to send us some bottles for the tasting today. It has also high acidity. It needs to ripen well, so we will see if they succeeded to do so in 2011.
I actually don't have a question, but having visited Knipser a summer or 2 ago, I was told that in the Pfalz, Gelber Orléans was used very often to be planted around the perimeter of other vineyards, because its very high acidity would deter people who tried grapes, wanted to steal grapes, and so the high acidity would put them off of the rest of the grapes, and that was its chief use, probably in the 19th century in the Pfalz.
Yeah, that's true. We tell the same story for Gouais Blanc in different places. This is an exciting wine, isn't it? Yeah, it has some white peach aromas, pineapple. It's the texture of the wine is close to Riesling, for example, in the mouth. It's very pure. It has sleek acidity, dried apricot aromas, well-rounded, smooth. It has a long finish of almond, some bitterness, rock mineral, and it's very surprising. It's like a mix between Riesling and Furmint, a little bit, because it has the aromas, exotic aromas of Furmint and the acidity of Riesling. It's quite strange. We move to wine number 3. There's no questions. Wine number 3 is from Switzerland. Okay, I tried to put one Swiss wine in each tasting, but not so many. Otherwise, people will get tired of it. And this particular Swiss wine, I think 99.9% of Swiss people have never tasted it. It's a particular variety from the Valais region, more specifically Haut-Valais, where they speak German, a dialect of German that is almost impossible to understand for German people. It was first mentioned in 1627 in Valais, so it's a very old variety. The origin of this strange name probably comes from Lassen Sie es nicht schon, which means in German, don't drink this too early, because it has a lot of acidity, like all these whites we had, and you need to wait a little bit before tasting the wine. So Lassen Sie es nicht schon becomes Lafnecha in dialect, so you can imagine how difficult the dialect is. Only 1.5 hectares in the world, all in Valais, so almost nothing. Only 4 producers do this wine, and when I did the DNA analysis, I found out that one of the parents is Humagne. It's a very old Valais grape variety, which was not surprising. So it's the yellow potato there. The orange is Lafnecha, and the green is the other parent, is Completa. And this was a surprise because Completa is a very old variety from Graubünden region in Switzerland, between Zurich and Ticino, Graubünden. And it had never been mentioned in Valais, so it was a challenge for me to understand how come is it possible that Completa had a child in Valais and then go back to Graubünden, okay, as if nothing had happened. So I suggested that maybe Completa still exists in Valais, but nobody knows. We went there with my friend's producer Chanton, and this old guy was showing us his pergolas. It's trained like in northern Italy, and he was saying, well, this is Kleine Lafnecha and this is Große Lafnecha, small and large. So I took samples of both. I made the DNA analysis, and both of them were Completa. And they didn't know it, and he still doesn't know it because he did not buy wine grapes. So this Completa grapes has been grown in Valais incognito for hundreds of years, and it is the parent of Lafnecha that we're going to taste today. It's made by the Chanton family. They make around 700 bottles per year. Of course, they sell everything in a snapshot. Made in stainless steel, low yield because it's highly productive, like the Grape Blanc, for example. You have to reduce the yields to have very nice aromas. And they do some other rarities. They do Grape Blanc, they do Himbacha and other strange names. If you ever want to visit them, just call me and I'll arrange a visit. So let's taste this wine. But really, this is a nice white wine, which goes pretty well with any kind of seafood you can imagine, or fish. It has green apple notes like the previous ones, but also elder flowers, pear flowers as well. It has a dense structure, high acidity but dense structure, which gives it a perfect balance in the mouth. It has a lingering floral finish, of course high acidity, but it's very refreshing, good density. I just love it. I hope you do. Extremely long finish, yeah. Sorry? Oh, I usually do have it with raclette. That's right. Yeah, some bitterness on the finish, yeah, yeah. But very pleasant, yeah. Lovely wine. So now we go to Croatia. You might think that I chose a wine, this grape, for the name, because it's hard to pronounce. Basically it's pronounced Gurk. It's one of the few languages to have 3 consonants together, making up a name. So Gurk is from Korčula island in Croatia, mainly in the village called Lumbarda, and which makes it really particular is that it has female flowers only. You know that in the flowers of cultivated grape varieties, you have male and female flower parts in the same flower, so that it can self-pollinate and produce berries every year. If grape varieties were not hermaphroditic, we would not have so many harvests every year, because we would have to pollinate one with the other. That's the case with really a few number of varieties in this book, and one of these is Gurk, which has only female flowers, so you need pollen to come on the pistil to have berries. So what they do is they plant Gurk together with Plavačmai, which is the red, the most widespread red in Croatia. So basically they have 3 rows of Gurk, 1 row of Plavačmai to give the pollen, and so on. The name comes from Gurk, which means bitter. Many other books say it comes from Greek, literally, but there is no reason, because genetically it has nothing to do with Greek varieties, and we have no evidence of Greek population on Korčula island. The surface is very, very low, under 50 hectares, all on this Korčula island, and very interesting is the pedigree of this variety. I told you about Trebidrag previously, which is the same variety as Zinfandel or Primitivo. We call it Trebidrag because my colleagues in Croatia have found an old herbarium sample, 90 years old herbarium sample called Trebidrag for a grape variety. They made the DNA analysis of this herbarium sample, and it is exactly the same as Zinfandel or Primitivo. And we have chosen to use the oldest valid name for grapes in this book, so the valid name is Trebidrag. For the story, nobody calls it Trebidrag today in Croatia, but there is one producer in the world who puts Trebidrag on the label from the first vintage this year, and this person is Carol Meredith in California. So you will have a Californian Trebidrag available on the market at the end of the year, probably. So Gurk is one of the progenies of Trebidrag, Zinfandel, together with Vranac, the red from Montenegro, Plavina Črna, with a cross with Verdeca from Puglia. It's funny to, when you make some discoveries of parentages like that, you always have to go back to history. And I did not discover it, my colleagues did, but having this Verdeca crossing with Trebidrag and giving a Croatian variety, makes us think of a link between Croatia and Puglia. Indeed, in Puglia there are some villages where they still speak Croatian, so ancient Croatian colonies where they do speak Croatian, so they probably transferred Verdeca to Croatia or vice versa, we don't know. Trebidrag is also the parent of Plavačmai, the most widespread red variety, together with Dobročić. And people are starting to plant more and more Trebidrag and more Dobročić in Croatia, and in a few years the market will have changed thanks to the discoveries of the genetics. And what we will taste today is made by Branimir Cebalo in Lumbarda on Korčula Island. 2,400 bottles per year, only 0.75 hectares in his winery, stainless steel made. So let's taste it. A little bit of bread crust that you can also feel in the mouth. I have no details about the vinification, but I suspect there is some old wood aging in this wine. In the mouth, it's toasty from the wood, with orange peel bitterness, a lot of acidity again, which makes it quite enjoyable because it's fresh and lively. A very long finish as well. And I don't think that we will see many Gerd wines all over Croatia because it's so difficult to cultivate. And we are lucky if passionate people like Branimir Ceballo go on making that kind of ampelographic gems like that. Then the next one is Colorco. Okay, Colorco is from Hoskoy region near Istanbul. We know almost nothing about this. We don't know the first mention. We don't know the origin of the name. We don't know the surface of it. We don't know the DNA profile. Nobody has done it yet. I'm ready to do that. It is made by these two guys, Seyit Karazoru and Andrea Paoletti. I try to put the pictures of the producers every time I can, because without them I would not be there presenting you the wines. So it's very important for me to show the faces, to show the producers in picture. So these two guys have collected some old vines of this Colorco in the area, and they do produce 200 bottles per year. In 2010, 200 bottles. In 2011, 106. And in 2012, nothing, because it was destroyed by powdery mildew. So out of these 200 bottles, Seyit took from his own collection to send it over to London for us today to drink the wine. So it's almost impossible to drink this wine and to have this tasting today. This variety used to be more planted before. It had declined since the 60s, and these two guys rescued it in 2005 from less than 10 growers who had kept this alive. And Pascelli, which is the name of the winery owned by Seyit Karazoru, Pascelli planted in 2010 a small vineyard and is today the only producer of this variety, which is in wine grapes, very hopefully. So let's taste it. And the nose is very waxy, honey, whetstone, minerality and floral aromas. The mouth is on bitter lemon, very nice pink grapefruit aromas, excellent acidity, and the finish for me is on pomelo finish, zesty, bitter, but very pleasant. I really like this wine. Move on to the last regular white, which is Biancola. As its name suggests, it's from Italy, the island of Ischia, just close to Naples, and it was first mentioned in the 16th century. Oh, yes, the vintage is not correct. It's not 2011, it's 2012. Thank you, Angela. So this Biancola was mentioned in the 19th century. The name comes from Bianco, of course, which means white. So it's the small white of the island. And I participated to a DNA project working on these varieties, and we found out a parent-offspring relationship between Biancola and San Lunardo. San Lunardo is another local grape variety on the Ischia island. So there is a kind of a micro genetic relationship on the island between these grape varieties. It is also planted in Procida island and also some in Campania, but most of it is found on Ischia island, 293 hectares in Campania. And this wine is so amazing that I wanted to show you the best pictures that I could, but I could not find them. So this is from Google Maps. This is the island, and the wine is called Vigna del Lume, which means the vineyard from the light. The light is not the light of the sun, but more the lighthouse for the boats. And this Vigna del Lume comes from Punta del Lume, and you have a focus on this region, and you can see all these lines going down to the sea are vineyards. There is no road to get there, only by foot, and you cannot bring back the harvest. So what they do is they have some machines within the vineyard to carry the harvest, and above the vineyards they have natural caves carved in the rocks, where they crush the grape, where they produce the must, and then they flow down the must, I don't know how, to the sea, and by boat in these containers they bring it to the city where they go on with the vinification. It's an amazing wine. This is heroic viticulture, really. And if you have a chance to go there, it's just fantastic. There is, I could not show you the film, there is on YouTube a filming of all this process that you can watch. And only this family, Mazzella, Vera and Nicola Mazzella, do this kind of crazy viticulture. They produce 6,000 bottles per year. They should sell it 100 euros, but I think it's more 10 euros than 100. It's grown the way called Albarello Esquitano, which is a kind of free growing of the vine, like a small tree. It is made slightly in late harvest, as we can taste right now. Wow, this is a fantastic wine. I just love it. It's great, great. It has pineapple aromas, almonds, honeysuckle flowers. It's very complex on the nose and then very balanced on the mouth. It has some tannins, we would say. It has a nice minerality. It's the volcanic soil, which explains that. The late harvest is not really perceptible because there is no, or not too much residual sugar. The alcohol is well integrated. It is very, very persistent on this dried apricot and also white peach. It's a very enjoyable wine. If you ever have a chance to go there, it's worth a visit. So now we move on to the three reds, starting with Cayette. Or Calette, but they pronounce it Cayette in Mallorca in Spain. This grape is particular to Mallorca Island. We don't know when it was first mentioned. Cayette means black in local dialect, so every time you have a grape name with white or black, it's always confusing because you can have many different grape varieties under the same name. But now we know what Cayette is, and it was announced as Palomino Fino and Villardiel crossing, but DNA analysis showed it to be wrong. It is probably Fogoneu, which is also from Mallorca, crossed with Cayette Casconcos, which is not cultivated, it's only kept in collections. And this Cayette Casconcos is a progeny of Beba and Giro from the continental Spain. So we have a Hispanic family that has been brought to Mallorca Island, which makes complete sense. So, well, DNA has shown it's not the one above, it's probably the one below. But I must say that in the Iberian ampelography is still at its child age. There is a lot to do in Spain and even more in Portugal to sort out all the varieties and all the genetic relationships between them. They are starting to do that, but there is still a lot of work to do. 134 hectares in Spain, made by Tony Gelaba, who has a wide range of different wines on the island. I could not find how many bottles they do produce. I only know that they do it 13 months in French barrels and American oak casks. That's all I know about the vinification. You smell the American oak. Coconuts. Yeah. It has been recommended to me by Julia Harding, who presented it at Vince in Budapest a few months ago. And I must thank her because it's a very interesting wine. Of course it's oaky at first on the nose. It has coconut aroma of American oak. But not only that, it is also spicy, red berry notes. I can smell some fresh tobacco, maybe some undergrowth and some mushroom aromas. On the palate it's fresh, it has soft tannins. It's not dominated by the oak on the palate at all. It is mineral, it is very supple in the mouth, a long finish, very nice wine indeed. Move on. The next wine is from Armenia. The grape is called Areni. It comes from the Biancola region in Armenia. This is a picture of me in 2003 over there with two wine growers of the Areni village. And just behind me is this mountain with these rocks. Below is Areni village. We don't know when it was first mentioned. It is named after the village. We don't know the surface of Areni in Armenia, but we know that it is the most important red variety and the most cultivated red variety. I don't know if there are some official statistics about surfaces in Armenia. We don't know the parentage. Back in 2006, I was the first scientist to apply DNA profile to Armenian grape varieties. And checking Areni, I could say it is distinct from all the other ones, but I could not identify the parents, and it would require a deeper research to decipher the parents of all these grape varieties, and I wish I or someone else can do this in the future. Which is very interesting with this variety is that Areni village is also the place where very recently has been discovered the world's oldest cellar. 4000 BC, so 6000 years ago, there was a cellar in this village. It has been published in 2011. So when I was there in 2003, I didn't know of it. And in this cellar they have found a lot of things. They also have found the oldest shoe ever made on earth. So it's southeast of Yerevan, the capital city. And they have found this. They have found these are not amphoras. These are called karasi, like berries in Georgia. These are clay vessels that are buried underground to make wine. They have found pips, bunches, and tasting cups, which leaves no doubt about them making wine there. And all the wines there are made in a relative traditional way, but this guy here, who is with us today, Zorik, is making what I can call the best Armenian wine today, and I ask you to join me on the stage to talk about your wine. All I know is that it is 20,000 bottles. So maybe there. So I met Zorik in Izmir at the EWBC conference, and we had a nice time together, and I really loved the wine you presented us, and I want to know more about your project and how you came up with such an extraordinary wine from Armenia, please.
First of all, the cellar is not mine, eh? And, that's it. Yeah. adventure, I can talk about the adventure, Zora adventure, which firstly I started as a hobby. I'm a first generation, but really very soon get out of the hand, and now it has become a lifestyle, very challenging lifestyle, but it's giving really enormous satisfaction behind all my expectations I could have imagined. It's challenging not only because I'm trying to revive the old traditions of Armenia. I'm trying to make an authentic wine with international credentials. I don't want to be the best in Armenia, I want international credentials. I'm working on it. But the most challenging part is because most of the traditions in Armenia are lost. We have 6,000 years of history, but because of our tumultuous history and related to so many things, we have lost a big part of our traditions. In this adventure, everything we do, we have to learn from our mistakes and our successes. So the process is slow, and I think this is the price you pay when you're a pioneer. I mean, I'm not complaining, but what we are achieving, respect to the other wineries, is very slow because we have to experience it on our skin. My mantra in this adventure is the way forward is the way back. So what I'm trying to do is to, as I say, revive the Armenian tradition, revive the ancient history we have, and matching it with the latest know-hows. In order to do this, the most difficult part is to manage to connect two different mentalities. Mentality of villagers that is in really rural part of Armenia, isolated, mountainous, ex-Sovietic mentality, and on the other hand you have the established winemaking techniques that you have to take into the system. Starting from grapes, there was no, I mean, we didn't have any confirmation of any kind about Areni Noir, that's the indigenous grape we are working with. So we have done, with my Italian viticulturists, we have done an enormous, and we are continuing to do field selection. We are trying to find the right clones. And I can tell you about the new plantation, which in any other vineyard maybe it's an easy process, but because of lack of new technology and mountainous, rocky lands we have, it is a really difficult process. I always say by joking, if Armenia doesn't have anything under the soil, we are lucky, there is no petrol, no uranium, nothing. But if one day stone becomes a precious item, we become rich in one day, so it's full of stones. Another interesting project I'm trying to revive in Armenia, as Jose was saying, we have 6,000 years back we were dealing with clays, amphora clays, but because of Soviet era, because Soviet decided that Armenia was designated for branding for no logical reason. So our tradition of clay making has been nearly gone. I mean, we do not have. I'm going from village to village to find the old potters, craftsmen, skilled craftsmen, and I'm trying to take youngsters with me to revive also this tradition, which I believe in it, because our wines have had positive response because of also this aging we have in our winery. The latest chapter in our adventure is the new wine we are working on. This one is from 19th century wines. There are plantations, semi-abandoned on 1,600 meters. They are so remote that even the transport getting there for the harvest is a big problem. We have to think how to get there to get the harvest. They are not grafted, they are on their own roots, as our vineyard, because our area in Rebozo, we have never had the phylloxera. So all the wines are their own roots. This has survived also Gorbachev era of prohibition, of the he had this plan to prohibit Russians to drink vodka, so he decided that he was going to destroy the vineyards in Armenia. That was part of the plan, but because this part is so hidden, it survived also this attempt. We have also in progress other researches with other varieties, which Armenia is full of, but as Jose was saying, there's a lot of work to be done there because there are so many authentic indigenous Armenian wines, and we are working also on white wine. That's a future plan. That's it. I can talk for hours, but I think
I know. Well, thank you very much for this information. You make a wonderful wine. I just love your wine. It's fantastic. It has earthy. My description of your wine is like earthy cigar nose with spices, black currant. It's very complex on the nose. On the palate, it has pepper and coffee. It has a full taste, but it's not very muscular. It's light. It's elegant, as you are. It has a very nice finish of orange zest, bitterness. I like it. A woman called Jensis Robinson, a newcomer to the scene, described it as a gypsy wine with gypsy flavor. I don't know why, but she gave it 17 points, which is extraordinary for an Armenian wine. And congratulations for your work. Thank you very much. Okay, we have to go on. Time is running. Thank you very much, Zorik. We go on with Rebozo Piave. Back to Italy. There are 379 grape varieties to play with in Italy, so there's a lot of work to do. Rebozo Piave is from Veneto region in northern Italy. It was first mentioned in 1679. Rabbioso means acidic in local dialect, probably. You will see that it makes full sense when you taste it. It could also mean tannins, because it's very, very tannic, as you will see. Surface planted is not so rare. It's 1,100 hectares, almost all of it in the province of Treviso. And DNA tells us that Rebozo Piave is the father of Rebozo Veronese. They have been confused one another, but they are different, and Rebozo Veronese is the natural cross between Rebozo Piave and Marzemina Bianca, which is not a white version of Marzemino. It's a different grape variety. And above it would be Focarina from Emilia-Romagna. So Rebozo Piave is probably a child of Focarina from Emilia-Romagna, which corresponds to the distribution, the historical distribution of this grape variety since the Middle Ages. This variety has been almost lost by local people because it was considered as too tannic and only good for vino di casa. But in 1996, Giorgio Cecchetto and other people have founded the Confraternità del Rebozo Piave. So, how do you say confraternity? Can you say that? Sorry? Confederation of producers. So they produced Common Bottle, and they also released a book. I didn't bring it along with me, but there is a book, Il Rebozo del Piave, in Italian, if you want to have all the historical information about that. And they have rescued this grape variety, and today the Cecchetto family here makes 7,000 bottles per year of this Gelsaia. Gelsaia is the name of a tree that grows there, and this wine, to overcome the high tannins, has 20% of the harvest that is dried for 35 days in the pasito style, like the Amarone, for example. They use new and used barrels for 12 months and then 16 months in the bottle for the wine to be ready to be drunk. So it's a very special wine and very tannic. Let's see. It ages very well. I've had some old vintages. It ages very well thanks to this huge load of tannins. It is very complex on the nose. It has ripe red fruit, cassis, liqueur, bitter almond, chocolate, tobacco. It's very complex. The palate is full-bodied. Of course, you feel the tannins at first, but they are very ripe, and they do not dry the mouth at all. They leave it very fresh. It has also strawberry, pleasant acidity that balances all together. The finish is also strong tannic, but also intense, and it has some licorice at the end, along with this bitterness. It's not a wine that you can put in any hand without prior indication, but once you know how it is made and what you expect, I think it's a very, very interesting wine. It's difficult to grow, and I'm happy that some people like family Cecchetto go on with this work. So, okay, the last two wines are what we call orange wines. This name orange wine was invented in 2004 by a friend of mine called David Harvey, who used to work for an importer, and for the customers they didn't know how to describe it. It's not rosé, it's not white, it's not red. They looked at it, especially the last one, and they said, well, it's orange. So they went on with this name since 2004, and today it has become a trend, especially in London. And these kinds of wine are really exciting. I like them. I'm happy to present two of them today. One of them is Granger. Granger from France, Haute-Savoie. In almost every book except wine grapes, you will read that Granger is identical to Savagnin or in the Savagnin family. First of all, I don't like to hear people speaking about the Savagnin family when they speak about Traminer, Gewürztraminer, Savagnin Blanc, Savagnin Jaune, and so on. It's not a family. It's a very old grape variety that has had many accidents and has a great diversity. Like Pinot, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris is one and the same variety. Traminer, Gewürztraminer, Savagnin Blanc, Savagnin Jaune, and so on is one and the same variety. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I took the DNA from the best vineyard of Granger, which is called Le Feu, because it's south exposure. And I made the DNA analysis, and I was happy to call back the producer, Dominique Belluard, and tell him, your Granger is not identical to Savagnin. It has nothing to do with this family. It is on its own. It has its own DNA profile. It is unique, and you're the only, almost the only one producer making serious wine with it. So he was very happy. He said he's very modest and not extroverted, but he said it's changed his life. So this grape is cultivated on 15 hectares. We have no idea of the origin of the name, Granger. And Dominique Belluard makes different versions. Dry one, another one in cement eggs, and a new one in real amphora. And that's the one we have today. 2 months of skin contact in amphora, pictured here, indigenous yeast, 1,200 bottles made per year. It's a brand new wine from this winery, and I'm happy to taste it with you today.
Yeah, Molette is one of the grape varieties allowed in Seychelles.
Okay.
And I couldn't tell you how many hectares there are, but there are, I would estimate, off the top of my head, 10 or 20 hectares in Seychelles of Molette. And I know Molette was allowed in the A's Cru Appellation, where this comes from. And there was some Molette at some point in A's.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Winklodge, who just wrote a book on Jura wine. I want
not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, but it's on its way. Yeah, in the process.
Many people in this room helped fund it, thank you, but I haven't written it.
I have no choice. Okay, thank you very much. So, this wine shows very interesting white flowers, jasmine aromas, citrus, white peach. In the mouth, it is, of course, it has some tannins because of skin contact, as you perfectly know. It has a mineral mouth with wild mint aromas, some anise also on the finish. It's well balanced, very persistent, freshness. I just love that kind of wine. I have no idea how it will age. We do not have any track record of aging that kind of wine, but I'm confident it can age pretty well. Okay? We are right on time for the last wine. I think so? The last wine is Kissy from Georgia. In Kakheti, which is the most important wine producing region in Georgia, in eastern part of the country. Again, we have no idea of the first mention. There are some old ampelography books written in Georgian, which I cannot read, of course. It's a bit like Armenia. We don't have a lot of information on historical documents. They do exist, but they still need to be analyzed and possibly translated in English. That would be great. So it does exist since a long time in Kakheti. We have no idea of the name. It's a very nice name, but we have no idea of the etymology. Only 50 hectares are produced today. And it was thought to be a cross between Svane Kahuri and Khatsiteli, which are two important white grapes in Georgia, but DNA testing showed that it's not. I was the one to do the DNA testing, and I can tell you it's not what everybody thinks. It's something else. We don't know the parents of Kissy. It is made in Kvebris, which is the equivalent of Karasi in Armenia. And Kvebris are clay vessels that are buried underground. Here you see a cellar. So it's one of the few cellars where you see nothing above ground. There's no barrel, there's no stainless steel tank, no nothing. Everything is underground. So these small holes have a cover, and you uncover it and you take out the wine. I'm sure you know how they make Kvebri wines. They just press the grape. Some of them leave the stems as well. They leave almost everything, the skin, the pips, and they close it. It starts to ferment, and then the cap goes down with the weight. The wine is above. It is transferred to another clean, empty quarry, and the residues are used to make cha-cha, which is like Mar in Burgundy, for example. And these kind of wines are typical to Georgia. It has been made that way since 8,000 years, approximately. So every time we taste such wine, for me, it's very emotional, because 8,000 years ago, what people used to drink was not far from what we have in the glass. And these wines are absolutely natural. They do not need any chemicals during the vinification process, because all the tannins and all the polyphenols that are released from the skins help to protect the wine. You don't need sulfur during vinification. Some people do not even put sulfur at bottling. These guys do. So being natural wines, of course, they are in the domain of Isabelle Legeron. I'm sure you know her, who created the Raw Fair, Artisan Wine Fair, which took place Sunday and takes place today, if you want to have a go there. And this particular wine, this Kissy, is made by Jose Vouillamoz, who is an American artist, painter, married to a Georgian woman and living in Georgia since 15 or 20 years now. And John is a converted to traditional Georgian winemaking. He produces 3,500 bottles of this Kissy per year, 2 months of skin contact in amphora as well, and indigenous yeasts. So let's taste the wine. Actually, there's a mistake. It's not 2 months, it's 6 months for this wine. 6 months. As Angela said, this wine is not for the faint-hearted. It has a huge load of tannins, and it's a white grape variety. Can you imagine? The grape is white. Well, I love that kind of wine, seriously, because it is very complex in aromas, probably due to the long skin contact. It has strong aromas of chamomile. Is it correct pronunciation? Chamomile, straw as well, herbs. I see dried fruits like dried figs. It's very fresh, surprising on the nose. The mouth, of course, is dominated by the tannins. It has a low acidity, if we can feel it under the tannins. They are very chewy. They are not drying, but chewy tannins. And what is amazing in that kind of wine is the extremely long persistence of the aromas in the mouth. When you drink it, 1 minute after you've drunk, you still feel the aromas and the tannins in the mouth. It's absolutely amazing. I hope you enjoy that kind of wine. It's not a wine for everyone without prior information, of course. So I'm happy to end with this wine and with this slide with a picture of me together with Hugh Johnson, whom I met for the first time last year at the book lounge, at Wine Grapes book lounge in London. And he did not believe me when I told him that I entered into wine thanks to him, because at age 20, 22, I used to go in the supermarket with his pocket wine guide in my pocket, and looking at all these bottles and telling to myself, I will never understand anything in this wine confusion. It's too complicated. So some years later, I'm here together with him on the picture, and I'm sure that he will agree with me by saying that wine grapes, if you want to keep them, save them, drink them. So thank you very much for your attention.